Hey there, this is Kristin from Printable Cuttable Creatables. In this video, I'm going to show how to prepare this cute gingerbread gable box for print then cut in Cricut Design Space, and then I'm going to show how we put this together. I do have another version of this box which is included in the same purchase with the print and cut design, so you don't have to purchase two separate files. And this version is if you prefer to cut each individual element from different colors of cardstock and then layer them. You can have a lot of fun, with some glitter papers and different things like that. So that will be a separate video where I show how to assemble this version of the box, and I'll put the link for that down below. So here I am in Cricut Design Space, and the first thing I'm going to do is upload my file. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to where I have the file saved on my computer. So even though this is a print then cut file, I have it saved as an SVG. It is saved in the SVG folder with this design. And here I have the other versions. Like I said, these are meant to be cut and layered from different pieces of colored cardstock. So I have a dash score version, I have a solid score version, and then I have this version that is labeled print dash cut SVG. So we want to make sure that we are opening the print dash cut SVG version of this file. So I'm going to go ahead and click open and continue again, and then I'm going to place this image on my canvas. Now by default, all SVG files come into Design Space with everything grouped together, and we can see that this box around everything showing that it's all grouped together. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click and choose ungroup to deal with each panel of the box separately. So if I click on this panel on the right, I can see it highlighted here in the layers panel. Now, in order to turn this into a print then cut design, what I need to do is come down to the bottom of the layers panel and click flatten. So that tells Design Space that this image is going to be printed. It's not going to cut each part out individually, it's going to print it. So then I'm going to click on the other panel and I'm going to click flatten again. And now we see the image has been flattened. So Cricut knows that this image is going to be printed and not cut. So now Cricut knows to cut around the edges of this design and not cut everything out individually. Now the next thing that we need to do is these layers here are our score lines, and after we did the flatten action, they kind of got buried in the back here. So I've selected both of these layers and I'm going to right click and choose bring to front. So now we can see the dashed score lines here on the front of the file again. So now I'm going to click and drag over the right panel to select both the score lines and the design panel. And I'm going to choose attach here in the layers panel. And then I'm going to do the same with the left panel. Click and drag to select both the image and the score lines. And I'm going to click attach. And that's all there is to it. So if I come over to one of these attached layers and click the little drop down arrow, I can see my score lines and then I can see my flattened image. Again, for the other one, I have my score lines and my flattened image, and that's what you want it to look like. And you want to make sure that your score line layer says basic cut and make sure that your flattened layer says print then cut. Okay, so once your file looks like this, you can go ahead and click Make. And then when we get our map preview, we have the print and cut boundaries set up that tells us if we're within our cuttable area. And then we can see the score lines are now showing in white for better contrast here, but we can see the score lines. We can see over here that this file is set up for print then cut, and this one is as well. So then we can go ahead and click continue, and we're going to be prompted to send our design to the printer. So I'm going to click send to printer and click next. I'm going to turn off the bleed and then I'm going to click print, and I have cardstock loaded into my printer. I am using a 65-pound cardstock just because I know that that's what my printer can handle. If your printer can handle it, feel free to use an 80-pound or heavier type of cardstock, especially if you are going to be putting something that's kind of heavy in the box for the purposes of holding an ornament or just a few treats and candies and things like that. I know that a 65-pound cardstock is going to do just fine, so that's what I'm using here. Okay, so once the first sheet finishes printing, it's gonna prompt me to connect to my Cricut and go ahead and cut it, but I wanna do all my printing at the same time, so I'm gonna click on this next page and send that to my printer, click next, turn off the bleed, and click print. And that's gonna go ahead and do the printing. Now I'm gonna go ahead and connect my Cricut. Okay, so now both of my sheets have been printed. So I'm going to click back on the first panel again, and I actually like to use the medium cardstock setting on 65 pound, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave everything else set to default, and then I'm going to meet you over at the desk so we can get these loaded into the Cricut and start cutting. So here I have both sheets that have printed out of my design. I want to pay attention to which sheet is number 1 in Design Space and which sheet is showing as number 2. So this sheet is first up as number 1. So I'm going to start with this one to make sure that the Cricut cuts the correct outline. I'm going to go ahead and put this down on my mat. And I'll go ahead and load that into my Cricut. And I'll go ahead and click cut and let the Cricut do its thing. Okay, so take that part out. And then what I like to do with paper, especially if you have a new mat or a sticky mat, is I turn the mat upside down and then I gently peel the mat away from the paper. That way it prevents the paper from curling. So if you peel the mat back, it leaves your paper nice and flat. So here we have one panel of our box. And we can see the score lines there. I'm going to go ahead and load up the next page. And I'm going to load this into my Cricut. And then I'm going to click the start button and let it go ahead and do its thing. Okay, so here we have our second sheet cut. And I'm going to turn the mat upside down and carefully peel the mat away from the paper. And again, what that does is it keeps the paper nice and flat so it doesn't bend. Okay, so now we have our second panel cut. And again, we can see those score lines cut in there. So now that we have everything print and cut, the assembly part is going to be really quick and easy. All we need is glue on the 2 tabs, and then we're going to fold in some other tabs, and that's it. So one thing that I do like to do is I like to pre-fold along all of the score lines before I do any gluing. So I'm going to fold everything inward along all the score lines except for the gingerbread man. I am folding outward for him, and everything else gets folded inward. Let me do that again with this panel. So I'm starting with the middle panel. Okay, folding everything inward except for our ginger man. He gets folded outward. There we go. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and put glue. So I'm going to put glue on this first tab, and then I'm going to carefully line up the edge and glue it on there. Okay, and then what I like to do to complete the box is turn it over and fold in the one end, and then I'm just going to put some glue on this tab and fold the other end on top of it. Okay, and then I'm just going to fold the other end over. Okay. And that's it for the glue. Next is the bottom, which is all flaps that are just going to fold in. So very quick and easy to put together. Okay, so now we have our box, and we can go ahead and fill this with some treats. The sides of the box, actually it does fit a 3-inch. This is a 3-inch ornament, so that does actually fit in there beautifully if you wanted to use it to hold an ornament. And there we go. So that is our adorable print and cut gingerbread gable box. As mentioned earlier, if you're interested in assembling the layered version of this file, I'll put the link to that video down below. I hope you found this video helpful. Please feel free to leave a comment or reach out if you have any questions.